Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Hello, and thank you for watching.
For the past few weeks, Central Square has played host to public property as that we have a tragedy of the commons issue, saying happy holidays, Keene.
Voluntary interactions where individuals are free to act so long as they don't initiate force.
This morning, we gather to remember Sergeant Tom Ball.
Hello, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Johnny Ray.
And I'm Allie Havens. In local news, Keene was flooded this past week. Some roads were washed out and some residents experienced flooded basements and more. Free Keene TV's own David Crawford filed this report.
I'm David Crawford reporting for Free Keene TV at the Water Street section of the Keene flood. Goes all the way up to Willow Street. Here we have a brave soul trying to pass the impenetrable flood. I'm going up to it. And there, further down, we see a person walking through the water. Wow. I wonder how deep it is. Look at that. Somebody's got water coming out of their house. That must be a pump to pump out their basement. Here we are at Crossfield Street. As you can see, flooded as hell. And now we're coming up to Grove Street. Can you believe it? This is all from last night. It goes, and look at that guy down there. He's up to his knees. Holy crap.
Hello. That was a fantastic story.
Good job, David.
The federal BI has taken an interest in Keene and more specifically in the various activists.
In a bold move this past week, a local man was picked up by the police and then approached by an FBI agent and asked to spy on fellow activists.
Our producer has this exclusive interview for you.
They wanted me, among other things, to come back into the Keene Activist Center wearing a wire. My name's Rich Paul. I'm a political activist in Keene, New Hampshire. I started the 420 rally here. I'm a free stater. Yesterday I was arrested when I was going to meet a friend at CVS. I was arrested by two plainclothes detectives from the Keene Police Department. They said they were serving an arrest warrant, and they took me to the Keene Police Department. They never booked me for anything or they did not immediately book me. They took me into a back room, an interview room, they said, and in this room I was introduced to two men. One claimed to be an FBI agent. The other claimed to be an agent from either state or local police, and I don't really know which. Neither of them identified themselves by name. They said that they had evidence of various illegal acts that they alleged I had engaged in, said that I was facing significant prison time, and asked me, not to put too fine a point on it, to become an informant for them. They wanted me, among other things, to come back into the Keene Activist Center wearing a wire and record people's reactions to my saying various things. And I didn't find out very much about what they were going to do because they immediately started trying to question me, and at that point I invoked my right to an attorney. They told me that if I invoked my right to an attorney that I'd be spending the night in jail, arrested for the existing warrant for narcotics delivery is what they were charging me with. But then when I actually refused, the state guy popped up and he said, well, we'll write you a summons saying that you have to come back in a month and cut you loose. And I'd been saying all the time that I really wanted to talk to a lawyer before I talked about anything with them. And, well, we'll cut you loose, you go talk to a lawyer, and then call us back 5 o'clock tomorrow and tell us what he said. So it is now just after 5 p.m. that day, so I'm a little late calling, on which isn't the most irritating thing I'm going to do to them today. But the most irritating thing is I'm going to refuse.
A couple of days ago, CrimeThink published the pamphlet Bounty Hunters and Child Predators Inside the FBI Entrapment Strategy. The 4-page document outlines tactics used by FBI employees to frame individuals, which is then leveraged for political gain to vilify entire groups of people and ideologies. Having long advocated for complete liberty, that is 100% freedom and 100% responsibility, where each of us is free so long as we don't initiate force, I am aware of many situations that fit the entrapment model described, where no one is acting in the wrong until an FBI employee infiltrates, advocates violence, and in almost every case supplies the money or ordinance on which the arrest and headline hinge, and through which another claimed usurpation of rights is justified. This scenario became a bit more real for me after I learned that a friend had been asked by an FBI employee to wear a wire. Rich was brought to the Keene Police Department and led into an interrogation room where he had an exchange with a man who identified himself as Phil. Phil inquired where Rich had been immediately prior to the arrest. Rich said at the club, and Phil gave the address of the Keene Activity Center. The Keene Activity Center, or CAC, is one side of a duplex that's billed as the community center, heart of operations, and meeting space utilized by liberty-oriented individuals based in Keene. The CAC is a comfortable environment to be yourself among friends working in concert to advance the peaceful evolution. Phil asked Rich to return to the CAC wearing a wire and to share with those present a completely fabricated scenario, that he'd been snatched up for a crime that he hadn't committed. Rich was told by Phil that he wanted to see who questioned the story and at what length. Rich invoked his right to remain silent and noted his desire to speak with his attorney before deciding how to move forward. Phil gave Rich his business card, on which he tried to scratch out his last name, though it was still readable as Christiana, and told him to keep their exchange confidential and to be in touch by 5 p.m. today.
So basically, I'm going to give them a call back, and I'm going to tell them that I'm not interested in their offer. That if they have a warrant, that they are welcome to contact someone who will have my phone number, and I will turn myself in at the nearest New Hampshire Police Department. But I am not going to wear a wire, and I am not going to inform on my friends. I mean, despite the fact, I mean, they're barking up the wrong frigging tree, and let's make that clear. There's no criminal conspiracy to hide here. There never has been. We don't blow shit up. We're not Timothy McVeigh here, you know. We had one guy who came in and started, or we've had two guys who came in and started talking about violence a little bit, not even in the immediate, and we showed them the friggin' door, because that's what we're about. We're not about violence.
A quick Google search turned up Christiana's bio. He notes, I am a CPA accountant by education from Rutgers University in New Jersey. I've been a special agent with the FBI for 20 years. I was stationed in the Boston field office as a new agent in 1992. I spent 5 years as an operator with the FBI hostage rescue team at Quantico, 96 to 01. I'm currently assigned to the New Hampshire Joint Terrorism Task Force at the Bedford, New Hampshire resident agency as a special bomb technician. I'm also responsible for security-related issues at the Manchester-Boston Regional Airport and Seabrook Nuclear Power Plant. I've also served as the primary firearms and tactical instructor for the Boston field office. But there's more to this story. Longtime Shire-based journalist Dave Ridley, who, based on his entertaining and informative videos, has gained a following from many in the area, including Leos who have personally told me that they watch and respect his channel, noted that he too had been visited by Phil Christiana. He wrote about their exchange. My experience with him was that he was more or less polite and professional but creepy. He came to the same Keene house where I lived there to learn more about Russell Canning's plan for civil disobedience at Manchester Airport's TSA checkpoint. That was in 2005. He also requested to have lunch with me and indicated, not in so many words, that he wanted me to be an informant. I told him I'd be interested in having lunch, but would report everything we said to the public. He declined to interact with me after that. In early 2001, Christiana visited the home of then Keene-based activist Kurt Hoffman. After Christiana identified himself as Phil, who worked for the FBI, Hoffman shut his door and declined to talk. Christiana later called Hoffman twice from a number determined to be his cell phone, 603-365-8098, and visited Hoffman's dad in Massachusetts, during which time he inquired about his knowledge of activities in Keene. Later that summer, after the conclusion of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, an annual week-long event held at Rogers Campground that was attended by over 1,200 pro-liberty people, FBI employees stopped by and questioned the owners about those who had attended, though they claimed to be concerned most about the vendors selling alcohol without a license, something that's not part of the FBI's purview. A couple of months back, Brad Jardist, who himself had worked in law enforcement before quitting his job due to his unwillingness to arrest those who used marijuana medicinally, confided that he too had been asked to sit down with an FBI employee. That conversation was focused on learning who at the CAC advocated the use of violence. In no uncertain terms, Jardis told the inquisitors that such a line of questioning was totally off base because no one at the CAC advocated such things. More recently, after friend Josh Nielsen was picked up for not checking in with his probation officer as dictated, he was questioned along a similar vein. When caged at the Cheshire County Jail, Josh was asked if he was aware of anyone advocating violence that was associated with the CAC. He laughed at such a statement, knowing full well that it was completely without merit. Should we be surprised by Phil Christiana snooping around here in Keene, or that of his colleagues' similar actions in other areas, where individuals freely associate and advocate for an alternative to the system that today bestows upon some extra rights? No. In fact, it is to be expected due to the perverse incentives inherent in the institution for which they work.
I think they were on a basic fishing expedition. They wanted to see if there was anything serious going on in here, but they also wanted to be able to entangle people in a bunch of random drug charges and that kind of thing in hopes to get them to then go infiltrate somebody else. So it's always going to be the snowballing thing, where, you know, there's what they're looking for and then there's what they hope to find, and it's not always the same thing. I will be going to court. I hope that I'll get some strong support from the activists here. This is what you should have done, Stacy Litz.
A recent high school graduate gave a provocative speech at the graduation ceremony recently. With a focus on critical thinking, the speech gave some a lot to think about.
Ager is our first student speaker. I was observing a forest and pond ecology class one night this past fall, and though I was there primarily to check in with our teacher, I noticed Kate as well. I noticed her eagerness to contribute, the curiosity behind her questions, her intensity, her intelligence. Kate has taken 5 classes with us, 3 of which were English. Her teachers have consistently commented on the quality of her writing, and she has maintained academic excellence in our program. Please welcome Kate Ager.
Throughout history, many positive changes have occurred and communities have evolved as a direct result of critical thinking. Critical thinking is about being both willing and able to evaluate one's thinking. The process consists of multiple steps, including, but not limited to, collecting information, comprehending the information, because if you can't understand what you're thinking about, you can't think about it effectively, analyzing it, and constructing it into a finished product consisting of well-reasoned conclusions and solutions. Finally, you must evaluate your finished product to confirm that it is reasonable, logical, and can be explained. Critical thinkers realize that no matter how skilled they are as thinkers, they can always improve their reasoning abilities, and they will at times fall prey to mistakes in reasoning, human irrationality, prejudices, biases, distortions, uncritically accepted social rules and taboos, self-interest, and vested interest. They strive to improve the world in whatever ways they can and contribute to a more rational, civilized society. I learned some very valuable things during my time in school, like reading, writing, and math. I enjoyed the English classes I've attended at Community Ed. They challenged me to think more thoroughly about and consider new aspects of what I read. I enjoy being intellectually challenged so I can further expand my knowledge and reasoning abilities. A few years ago, I was introduced to a new concept. The concept, self-ownership, has a much broader reach than solely the public school system. But as I had been and would continue to be exposed to public school for multiple years, it was the perfect subject of consideration for me to use to explore the concept. After experiencing 12 years of public schooling and applying critical thinking to the experience, I have come to a logical conclusion. I ask that before judging the conclusion I have reached, you listen to what I have to say with a completely open mind. The ability to do so is a crucial characteristic of a critical thinker. Each one of us has had and will continue to have an impact on the people and the world around us. In our own ways, we will each change the world. The only question is how. Over the course of my life, I've learned that it is wrong to initiate force on others and that the use of force is acceptable only in self-defense or defense of another. That sentiment has been reinforced by parents, teachers, and principals from the first day of kindergarten through today, as well as friends and even strangers. The majority of people in my life seem to encourage peaceful interactions and discourage actions such as physically harming or stealing from others. If I had to pick the most important thing I've learned thus far, it would be that the initiation of force is wrong, regardless of your age, gender, color, job title, or intentions. For those unaware, public school is funded primarily by taxation. Most people are forced to pay taxes. I say forced because even if you are one of the few people that truly desire to give a portion of their earnings to the government, you are doing so under the threat of coercion. It is not a voluntary interaction if you do not have the option of saying no without having force used against you. I very much dislike that my public school education was funded by so many that didn't want to. In addition, students cannot withdraw their attendance without substituting it with another form of government-approved curriculum. Even if those initiating force have what they believe to be good intentions, the use of force is still wrong. Herbert Spencer said that a man's liberties are nonetheless aggressed upon because those who coerce him do so in the belief that he will be benefited. I don't want anyone to have the misconception that I don't think education is important. Education is the most important and most powerful tool to change oneself and the world around us. I know that a common concern for many when they hear my statements about public school is how students that are not wealthy would be educated otherwise. I could suggest a slew of alternatives to public schooling, such as community schools that are funded voluntarily or unschooling, which allows children to learn through their natural life experiences. All interactions ought to be voluntary, even if that means having to be more creative about finding solutions and ways of achieving things that you need or want to see in your life and your community. Voluntary interactions are not only the moral route, but would be beneficial to each and every one of us. I think it's safe to say that every one of us that is graduating today has a vision of what their future could or should look like. And while I wish you all the best on your journeys, I want to remind you that it's great to plan for your future. Just don't live there, because really nothing ever happens in the future. Whatever happens, happens now. So live your life where the action is, now. Now I will continue on to make a positive impact on the world by being a peaceful person who advocates self-ownership and personal responsibility, sharing the ideas with as many people as possible along the way. Now I will work towards a future where all interactions are voluntary and the initiation of force is not considered acceptable in any situation. Once those key elements to a peaceful society are established, there is no limit to the creativity and prosperity we will see. Now, well, after I receive my diploma, I will leave this stage and I will leave this school, and I will go on to be the change that I want to see in the world. Will you? As said by Socrates, I cannot teach anybody anything, I can only make them think.
James Carroll is a student at Keene State College. James has been on Free Keene TV earlier this year as one of those who spoke out against the Bearcat at the City Council meeting.
James is with us in the studio for an interview. Hello, James, and welcome to Free Keene TV.
Howdy.
Hey, James.
Howdy.
So, where are you from, and how long have you been in Keene?
I live in Lebanon, New Hampshire.
Okay.
I've been attending Keene State College for 3 years now. So when I'm at school, I live obviously in Keene, and then usually for the summer I'll linger for a few months here, but back and forth really to work at home in Lebanon.
Okay.
Yep.
So what's been your experience as a student at Keene State College?
I like it. I think it's a small, fun school. It's a cute little town, although it can get dull at times, but for the most part I find it fun.
What are you studying?
It's a blend of, it's an individualized major, which is you take core classes from a different subject. So I'm studying politics, sociology, and education. You put those together and then it creates an individualized major, they call it. So.
Interesting.
Yep.
So you have another semester left.
Yep, one more semester.
All right. So what is your, since you're 3 years into your experience in Keene, what has been your experience with the local officials here, the police?
Right. I think as a freshman you don't notice it. I didn't notice it at first. I know a lot of college kids don't pay attention to it at all. They rather just complain about how awful the police department is. But after my freshman year I started to notice that maybe sophomore year I started to realize how unreasonable they were, and that began with
The KPD?
The KPD, yes. That began with them coming to our room because they smelled marijuana. And I've always been interested in rights, your rights. It's always been something in law enforcement, your rights with law enforcement. So I noticed right off the bat that was the first thing, them coming and how rude, forceful they were. And campus safety goes right along with them. Campus safety is just under them, and they suck up to them, and they play little games so they both feel good about themselves.
Does campus safety have authority, or are they working together because the KPD has more?
Campus safety, I think, to the best of my knowledge, is that they pretty much, if they think something's wrong to that extent, they call KPD. And that's what happens. So they don't ever hesitate to call them. They like that. It gives them something to do, something to get worked up about, even a smell of marijuana, anything silly that they can create in their own head. And it's a matter of opinion if you smelt it or not. It's selective,
right,
to the individual. So, but anyway, they came, and I noticed that. And then I wasn't arrested. I was placed in protective custody by Officer Kopcha. I think that's the pronunciation of it. For a friend was getting ticketed for having a party for being too loud, and I walked by my friend as they were trying to interrogate him, intimidate him about, oh, you better tell us this and this. I said, just remember you don't have to answer any of his questions. Don't get yourself in trouble here. And he responded with, oh, you're a lawyer. And I said, no, I'm not. And he goes, are you intoxicated? Yes, I'm allowed to be. I'm 23. And he said, put your hands behind your back. At that point, I went peacefully because I know that turns out for the best in the end. So they arrested me. I was in cell for an hour for nothing. I was confused. That's when I really realized that, oh, if they're willing to go to this extent with college kids, or anybody for that matter, I was like, started looking into it more. I became more aware of Free Keene, Cop Block. I think that stuff's the Cop Block thing especially I really enjoy. So I became more aware of it, and then I started the Bearcat thing. The Bearcat.
Yeah. So do you feel like the campus is a relatively safe place to be, other than the police potentially coming in and arresting you?
Right. Yeah. It's definitely it's not a big deal. It's a college, and they act as if the whole concept of kids getting drunk and doing drugs is a whole new thing. That happens at every college, and I've sat down with the liaison officer to talk to him about it, and he went through and he was saying, I said, I feel like we're in a police state. You go out any Thursday through Saturday, and it's just absurd how you look out onto the main road, and there's just back and forth KPD, back and forth. Then we'll get a few state troopers in there as well, a few sheriffs. It's not necessary. The town's tiny, but that's their excuse. Is that back when the Red Sox, when they had riots, or people live here too, and they need to be protected. That whole there's a lot of college. It's just the typical college town. Kids are drinking, getting drunk.
Right. So basically, your witnessing of this police state-like atmosphere is sort of what got you interested in the Julio Angel de Jesus, his lethal interaction with the KDP?
Right, it was that, the Bearcat issue I was very against, and that was just the city council didn't listen. The city council, I feel like they're assigned to listen to the people, but instead I think the majority of people didn't want it, but instead they said they were giving their reasons, the people who voted for it, why they think it's a good thing. Well, that's not I didn't think it was their job. I thought your job was to listen to what people wanted. But instead, you're forming your own opinion. So that happened, and I talked to Chief Miola about it. I sat down with him, talked to it. He assured me that they weren't going to buy any of the real lethal attachments or whatever you want. And we'll see what happens, And they just say things to please you. And then this happened. I wasn't here for this, but I couldn't believe it because a few of my friends had witnessed the chase. And then I read the details of it. They just came out with a detailed report. And right off the bat, I thought, this is strange. The whole thing is just very odd. My biggest concern about it is how it's been brushed under the table and somebody was murdered, regardless of criminal or not. That's always what people come at you with this. Well, he was an awful person.
Right. Seems like there should be more discussion about it.
Someone's dead.
Right.
If it was think about the opposite. Okay, if one of the police officers was killed, oh my God, it'd be all over the papers. That investigation would go even more in depth. But because the Attorney General released an official report, it's okay. Then that's what the report said. The use of force was justified. Well, who's to decide that? One person now decides that, I guess. And you looked. I'm sure you know the details. It was 9 shots were fired. I think it was 1 or 2 hit. And I asked him. I said, what about those shots that just flew all over? And he goes, and why was he shot? He was running away, and you chose to. I mean, I don't know how whoever aimed. We're never going to get those details, but he was hit in the neck, from my understanding. So that's someone running away, hit in the neck. There's legs, there's arms.
The reported story eventually came out that, or at least what was reported by the police, was that one of the officers was in the line of the car when he was running at him. But yes, that the gunshot wound was in his neck. I believe it was in the retreating position.
Right. So, but I think that's funny is that they felt threatened, and I think you have to look at that individual who fired the shot. Because someone almost clipped you with your car, maybe that shot was fired that way because out of spite or out of anger, and you have to stop and think, oh, you couldn't have shot him in the leg, but because he almost clipped you with his car, because you're in that uniform now, you might have a little more leeway with getting away with murder, and I think that's just what happened. Imagine if he was running away and a citizen killed him. It would be far more in depth than this, but now they just want to cover it up, make him out to be a bad person, and that's okay. And I think that's very scary, because at the end of the day, whoever shot him has that on his conscience every night he goes to bed, regardless if you're wearing an outfit or not. You still you took a human life that night. And that's what I wanted to talk. I wanted to talk to Chief Miola about this more in depth, and he declined. He said, "You know the details. I don't know what else you want me to tell you." So.
So what would you like to see come from this story? You just like to see more reporting on it?
Yeah, more accountability, a little more in-depth explanation of why. I mean, I want to know why 9 shots were fired. Why that many? That's unreasonable on a person running away, 9 shots.
Right.
So you were hoping maybe they have awful aim. I don't know. I just want to know the details on why it's just been brushed on the rug so fast.
Do you think that the nationality of De Jesus played any part in why this is sort of being ignored?
What was he?
He, as far as I understand, he was Hispanic, and a lot of people in comments online comments on the story seem to sort of brush it off as, oh, he's an illegal. And
I think that plays somewhat. I tend not to look at the whole immigration thing as a huge part of that nationality, because I think either way the bottom line is someone was murdered, and that's the scariest part, is that man's still working. Any other profession, you don't get away with stuff like that. But so I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I think it's a scary thing for the future. Kids here and everybody here. So
any final thoughts on any of this?
No, the last thing I just want to say is that the next thing will be interesting with the Bearcat when that comes out, when they want to use that, when that's something to do. And I think if there's not a pumpkin fest, that might be a convenient time. They can wheel it out amongst the other hundreds of officers that will be watching us. So we'll just see what happens.
We'll be watching too.
Awesome.
Thanks for being on.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
And thank you for joining us tonight. If you wish to be a guest on the show and have your voice heard, send us an email.
Our address is tv@freekeene.com. I'm Allie Havens.
And I'm Johnny Ray, wishing you and yours, nothing but the best.